Wondering what people can see online about your business finances? Well, watch on. As a business accountant, my team and I spend all day long helping business owners on their journey. And of course, as people start to do well in business, or even when they're just starting out, they worry a little bit about what other people could potentially find out about their business. That could either be because they're doing amazing and they're worried about other people looking at their finances, or the opposite, they're concerned that actually when they're going for contracts, or, nosy neighbours and people are could look at their information and find out some things about them they'd rather not see while they're building those businesses in the early stages. So in this video, I want to talk about what you can actually find online. But before I do, if you like these type of videos, make sure to click the subscribe button below so you get notified whenever we release more just like this one. So let's start off with talking about sole traders. So if you're a sole trader, an individual in business by yourself, it's actually quite difficult to find any real information about your business online, like not a lot. Outside of what you stick on your Facebook, there's not a lot there. If suppliers or people are going to look to open accounts for you, then they would generally, credit search you as an individual. So, but again, the data is very, very limited on that. It's not a case of they can see any of your accounts because you would do tax returns and the like for the revenue, HM Revenue and Customs, but they're all private data. Nobody else can see those other than the revenue. So if you're a sole trader, you're pretty good. Where most of the action is around this is when you're a limited company, because there is a lot of snooping you can do online. So what happens is on Companies House each year, companies have to submit accounts, and I'll talk about the various different accounts in a minute, but you have to submit some stuff to the Companies House. Now, the first thing when you incorporate the company is you have to put on there who the owners are, who the directors are. So that information is basically visible, and I'll put a link in the links below. But basically, it's like company Google is the best way to describe it. You can just search your company's name, and all the different types of companies that sound like that kind of name are going to be on there, and you can click in and see various different types of data. And of course, there's a little tab, there's sort of 4 little tabs, and one of those tabs is people, and it tells you about who the directors are. So you can see their date of birth. You can't see the day, but you can see kind of month and year. Shows you their nationality and their occupation if someone's stated that as well, and it will show you an address. Now, quite often, we'll talk about addresses in a minute, that address might not be their home address, but we come across a lot of owners who have unwillingly put their address in there and it's on the public record. So if you get a disgruntled customer or somebody's not happy with you, or I don't know, anybody just doing snooping and wants to find where you live, that's one way they can do it. And of course, the company address is on there the same. So if you're operating a small business as a small limited company, particularly from home, and you don't put any other address in there, then they're going to be able to see your home address. So that's visible on there. Now, just a quick one on addresses then while we're there. You can use a registered office address. That's the kind of the main company address on Companies House, and you can buy that online. There are people that sell it. Accountants generally provide this as well. So it's quite normal if you search a company to see an address that's not really the trading address of the company. It's a registered office. Quite often, not quite a post box, but that kind of feel. It's a physical place somewhere that sells that address, or an accountant's address quite normally. And then quite often that address can be used as what they call a service address for the directors. So it hides that address there. So that's possible, 100% possible that you can hide those. But if you're not aware of it when you form the company for that first time, yes, you can change it later, but it will always be logged on Companies House for your history. So really do think about that before you form the company. So that's the first thing, addresses and some information about who the directors are. And I think that's quite important because a lot of people, and it's been asked on the YouTube channel as well, people say, can my boss find out about my side hustle? Well, if you've got a limited company and you're the director, yeah, quite easily. So it's going to be on there. And the other thing then they can then do is by using the filing tab, there's certain documents you're going to file. And if you can read them properly, you're going to be able to find out who the owners are. I mean, we use it quite often just to see the tax efficiency of a company that we might be taking on. We have a look at it and say, yeah, you could do X, Y, and Z because we can see your shareholding is like this. So that's generally visible as well. You'll be able to see that through various documents. Now let's talk about the finances then, the accounts. Now the accounts, there's various different types of accounts that you could submit. So it depends what they've done. If they've submitted dormant accounts, that's kind of the first type. It just means they haven't really been trading. They're not active during the period they've submitted. The only caveat to that being that it depends, because you only have to submit accounts once a year, and then you get 9 months after the company's year end to submit those accounts. Generally, it could be quite a long time ago. They might have been active now, but not submitted any data for a while. So it could have changed, but generally you can see if they're dormant, but it tells you next to nothing in those accounts. In fact, there's a free tool online where people can do those accounts, and they're the most common type of self kind of submitted accounts you'll see for a limited company. So dormants, they're there. Now, the other type then is you've got full accounts. So the opposite of dormants is you go in all guns blazing and you can see all the finances. You can see the profit and loss report that shows you all the income, tells you how much they're turning over, how many sales they've had in, shows you all their costs broken down and all the key information. Now, the good news is it's only generally bigger companies that do this. You know, if you stick Royal Mail or someone like that in there, you'll see their full accounts pack, and they make quite a cool, as an accountant, it's quite cool to see. They make a good effort on those accounts. Big old pack, you know, sometimes 20 odd pages full of accounts and reports on this and everything else. Now, as a small business, you could do that. But for the reasons we've just said, it's unlikely you're going to want to submit those full accounts. Now, they're great because lenders, anybody really wanting to invest in that company can really see the detail of the company to a degree. Obviously, these massive multinationals, it's a bit harder sometimes to read those accounts than it would be for a smaller business, but you can still see a massive amount of the financial information. So generally what small businesses do is they submit one of two other types. So one you might have heard of is called a micro entity account. Now what that is, it's a different accounting standard, won't bore you with the technicals, but it's a much more cut down version. And what you do is you don't generally submit that profit and loss report, you just have what they call a balance sheet. Kind of shows the overall position of the company, and you can do a couple of ratios to see how healthy it is, that kind of thing. However, the micro entities, because they are so limited in information, can be a problem if you're looking for investment, lending, credit searches. It can be difficult to ascertain some of those kind of ratios that they want to see if you're a good bet or not. And if you're looking for investors, obviously, they can't see a lot from there. There's notes that you have to put on the accounts are a lot smaller, so you have this micro entity ones. However, we see a lot of people doing them, and a lot of these online super cheap file only type accountants and things all submit them because it's less work basically. Now the middle ground on that is if you don't want to submit those because you know you don't know what you want long term, and you might want credit accounts and these kind of things and make life a bit easier. There's a sort of a middle ground, and that tends to be where we do as a business. We tend to do these. They used to be called abbreviated accounts. They're now termed filleted accounts. But basically you don't submit that profit and loss still, so it's a bit like a micro set. You don't have this is what you're turning over, no one can see what you're spending your money on, it's only the balance sheet. But the notes are a bit more expanded, the balance sheet's a bit more expanded, and there's a bit more detail for somebody to get their teeth into, but ultimately it doesn't tell you a lot. If you're an accountant, you can draw certain conclusions, or somebody that knows how to read a balance sheet, you can draw certain conclusions in them and to a degree in the micros, but you can't see actually how much profit somebody is making, for example, how much they're turning over. So there's just certain other things that will be on there that help you read it. So generally with accounts, you'll be able to see how many employees that company has, because there's generally a disclosure that's required for that. However, like all these things, it's kind of a self-assessment. Somebody submits them. The amount of incorrect sets of accounts you see on Companies House, or they just haven't got certain disclosures you know they should have, there's loads of them, and the policing of it seems pretty poor. But in theory, you should be able to sort of get that kind of information from it. But yeah, ultimately, if you submit filleted or these micros, they're going to be able to see very little around the financial data other than the kind of health of the company. So like, for example, you could probably tell that there'd be a shareholders fund box at the bottom of that balance sheet, give you some idea of kind of the health of the company to a degree. Now there's one other bit of financial data that's kind of worth mentioning. It's not related to tax and Companies House, but if you've heard of open banking, it's possible now to get give your bank transaction data to other third parties. The most common use in our world is that in accounting software. So if you've got a Xero, QuickBooks, Free Agent, these types of software, you can plug your bank in and it will transmit the data, but it's also possible to share that data with other parties. That there might be comparison apps, those kind of things, but that is only ever with your permission. So somebody snooping can't find that. So snooping, if you want to snoop about your limited company, you're going to see who owns it, who the directors are, and if they haven't submitted full accounts. And I did see one when I was mucking around testing this for this video, having a look. I did find several accounts where somebody submitted their own set using the free HMRC tool that is possible, and they've done the whole profit and loss. You can see literally every penny, and I think most people would want to protect that. So, but using either a micro or a filleted set of accounts, you'll be able to protect your privacy, but make sure that you've got enough data on there so that you can be able to, people can see that you exist and you are the real deal. And that's it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please do share this with anybody you think needs to know this information, and I'll see you in the next one.